Our questioning begins right now.
Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Steele Report, and we're going to talk about an ongoing topic that has been in the news for quite some time now, and that's the Iowa Juvenile Home.
Of African ancestry have made to these United States.
Yeah, I would also say that it's about talking about the issues that affect African Americans and to try to seek to resolve those, to understand some of the racial disparities that we still have in this country.
Absolutely. It's a combination. Our job is to help people who need to find a job, to find a great job.
We're here because there's an important deadline coming up. So, Natalie, tell us about that March 31st deadline. What happens to those who are not enrolled now, and what they need to be thinking about, because they would face a penalty?
To banish him, it was, in my view, it was rooted not just in the moral, but I do believe money has a significant role in it. Now we're talking about taking a man's business from him.
Paying state employees to
So there weren't severance packages, or what we want to call them, payments made during the Democratic administrations that people didn't sign and still got paid. Do we know that?
There were confidential settlements under other administrations. That is true.
And again, well, first of all, I don't know that there is a list.
So you've never actually seen the list yourself?
No. I've never seen it.
So if you've never seen the list, who has the list? Do you know?
I have no idea.
But
I don't know that there's a list.
Now, do you think, are you aware of any private employers who might have access to this so-called exclusion status list?
No. Well, as I said, there's no list.
So that was the governor talking about that. So your reaction to that statement?
Well, there's clearly a list, and it's a pretty big list. And there's several parts to it. One, there's a no-hire list, which in some regard...
So that was the governor talking about that. So your reaction to that statement?
Well, there's clearly a list, and it's a pretty big list. And there's several parts to it. One, there's a no-hire list, which in some regard...
So that was the governor talking about that. So your reaction to that statement?
Well, there's clearly a list, and it's a pretty big list. And there's several parts to it. One, there's a no-hire list.
We were talking about when Senator Hatch did say that, and did he apologized? And
well, what he said was it was a teachable moment and he learned. But Representative Phyllis Thady out of Davenport said it best. If it would have been a Republican, there would have been a much different outcome.
Do you make an extra point to stay close to them?
We do. We also respect their privacy. They also have a couple years behind them that they haven't been able to fully grieve. Because the case is still so active. So we respect their privacy as well. We
don't exactly know how big it's going to be, but the Ebola scare, are you perfectly satisfied with the way this has been handled by the government and by your personnel in Dallas?
Well, there is no perfect handling of an event, whether it's a hurricane or whether it's some other natural disaster or whether it's something as absolutely out of the ordinary as a space shuttle falling onto your state. We've had all of those over the course of the last decade plus.
Any of these people, if they're having trouble with the VA, they can contact AMVETS through you guys? And,
certainly.
And can you give it, we'll put a phone number up there if you have one, or a website or anything like that where they can contact you and you can try to help them get the services right away that they need.
What is disappointing, of course, when people put so much emphasis on property rights, when they fail to respect the fact that another young man has lost his life at the hand of someone who obviously doesn't seem to demonstrate the kind of training that we would expect to go along with the position.
Not again, or here we go again.
Right.
And so these incidences, of course, they've been happening historically, but it seems with media now, this is happening with such frequency.
The Alice Training Institute has some interesting things about 5 questions that as parents you can ask your school district or ask your school board of education about child safety. And it starts out with this one, Dr. Barney. What are the current security and crisis response procedures during an event of a violent intruder? And are these procedures co-developed with local law enforcement?
You know, and the greatest part about that, when we talked about that training that we did during the summer a few years back, the Waterloo Police Department was involved in those training, as well as the Evansdale Police Department and the Cedar Falls Police Department.
They're still going to pay at least 20%.
Yeah. Do you know that that one of the things that this program was supposed to do was cut down on that number?
because emergency room care is the most expensive health care you can have.
Had it coming, or that is not true, is it? It's not their fault. You know?
It's common. It's part of, like Ben touched on, part of that emotional and mental abuse, and that just cycles over time. It's part of that manipulation that somehow they're not good enough, or if they would have just done better or been smarter, or if they would have left sooner before it got this bad.
Even though we're talking about the Cedar Valley United Way, which impacts Waterloo, Cedar Falls mainly, and surrounding counties, and Sheila will talk about that, it also affects all of you because there is a United Way that can help you in your specific area and your community. So all of this is really relevant to what's happening in your town.
What Iowan would send a third grader away from home for any reason? I can't think of an Iowa family that would do that. But these are families where the children have been sent away because that's the safest thing that can happen for them. And to do that indicates how bad and dire the situation is in Central America.
You know, it's frustrating because they do end up in the jail, and we recognize that right now we're holding more forcible felons than ever before in our population. We don't have those Otises that check themselves in on the weekends anymore coming to the county jail.
How would you describe the community of Postville today after this raid, which at the time 389 people detained. That was the largest immigration raid in U.S. history at that time in May of 2008.
Well, as you mentioned, our shelters are incredibly important. We have three, one for men, one for women and children, and one for families. So families facing homelessness can stay together instead of being broken up.
What happens in the brain when they have that kind of G-force hit? And what are we talking about when you say concussion as a head injury?
I think it's first to clarify what a concussion is not. It doesn't involve bleeding in the brain.
The ride for missing children. We had the great experience of traveling to Utica, New York with Drew Collins and Chief Dan Trelka just about a week or so ago for an event that helps raise money for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and also for the Utica chapter, which is the New York branch of the center. It was just a great experience, and that's why we're here on the Steele Report this week to talk about this event and also bring you up to date on the investigation and to find the killer and kidnappers of Lyric and Elizabeth. And good morning, everyone. I'm here with Michael Crow, Chief Dan Trelka, Heather and Drew Collins to talk about this event. I'm interested in adopting, or I'm interested in being a foster parent. What would happen then after they made that call?
There's two options. One is the phone number. We also have on our website, iowakidsnet.com. If you go to that, you can fill out the inquiry completely online.
On Meet the Press, you've already done an interview with Joni Ernst. You'd met her for the first time.
Right.
So what did you come away from that meeting with her?
Well, there's definitely a confidence about her. She owns her stump speech in a way that, you know, look, she's a new candidate.
One of the pivotal points in the campaign, one which a lot of people say you still have not recovered from, was the incident in Texas. So I would like you, I know you've made an apology to Senator Grassley and to Iowa farmers, but I would like you to explain to Iowans what you were thinking at that moment. What were you trying to say? Surely you would have known that somebody was probably going to be taping this. So what were you saying that night, and would you like to have that moment back?
Well, of course, Ron. Look, we all say things we mistake. I think when Joni Ernst called President Obama a dictator and said impeachment should be on the table, she probably regrets making that comment.
A lot of people are only concerned about the politics, particularly those who maybe supported some of this or knew about it, about their next election, and very little about the real lives that are going to be impacted.
Yeah, as a former agency employee, as an American, the release of the report, for whatever reason, it has been released.
Obviously, you've understood the value of education.
Right. You know, my parents coming out of Mississippi with a 3rd and 8th grade education, it was always important to them that their kids are, you know, educated.
It's nice for us to be in existence to you know, help market the Unidome and the McLeod Center and Young Arena and the new Sportsplex and kind of fill that niche to make sure that we're not missing opportunities.
Yeah, so if you want to get a hold of Jim Marlin, the Executive Director of the Cedar Valley Sports Commission, they have, of course, a web page, Facebook page. Like, for example, the Shriners Bowl is one of the events now that the Cedar Valley Sports Commission has gotten involved in the last 2 or 3 years, so that's great. So, Jim, really appreciate that, doing a great job. And again, if you have an organization that might need a little help on your sporting event, contact Jim Marlin at the Cedar Valley Sports Commission. We'll see you next week on the Steele Report, also online on KWWL.com. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.